Dragged Across Concrete is a 2018 or 19 film that I honestly didn't even know existed. I had no clue what this movie was. I just heard about it somewhere, and I was just like, okay, I'll check this out. And I checked it out, and I had no idea what I was getting into. I definitely didn't know I was getting into a movie as long as it was. But Dragged Across Concrete was a film I literally knew nothing about. And it's about these two cops who get suspended at the worst possible time. They are really struggling for money, so they attempt to pull off some sort of heist to get some money. That's a very simple plot. But the way it's told, and the way they use the characters, and meanings, and what this movie means, especially with the runtime, which I'll get into, it really creates a really atmospheric experience because of this. And let's talk about this movie. Let's start off with the positives, because the performances. I didn't even know Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn were in this film. I knew nothing about this movie going in. I just knew the title, and that was about it. Yeah, they were fantastic as these suspended cops. You really felt for them. You had Mel Gibson, this cop that's been in, he's been a cop for years. Again, he's nearly 60, he hasn't really done anything with his life. He gets suspended at the worst possible time. His family is horrible. He lives in a really bad society where his daughter gets abused and his wife is really ill, and he really needs the money. And being a cop just isn't doing it. And you can really feel for his character like that, because you really feel like his character hasn't achieved anything in life except his family, and his family are even doing too well themselves. And you can really feel the realism in this movie. This film is known for its unsatisfaction. This film does not want to satisfy you as a viewer. It does not want to satisfy you in the ending. It wants to make you feel as real in this situation as possible. Some things happen that I was just like, no. I don't want to watch this. This is not satisfying. I did not anticipate this. But it happens, and you're like, okay, that's realistic. Something that actually happened in that situation. They didn't sit there and look at the script and say, what would entertain people most? No, they looked at what is the most realistic in this situation. That's what I loved about this movie. This film has balls. This film does some unique goddamn stuff. This film puts in things that normal filmmakers wouldn't even consider putting in their movie. And that's what I loved about this film. It goes so against the norm of what a plot like this could just be. A plot like this could just be a very simple movie about two cops. Simple action movie, throw it out there. This movie has some very deep themes, some very deep messages, and some riveting stuff. And a very long runtime. This film is nearly 3 hours, I believe. It's like 2 hours and 48 minutes. That's a heck of a long movie. And it's not one of those movies that flows by. This is extremely slow paced. There are scenes where it's just like Vince Vaughn sitting there eating a sandwich with no music, no dialogue for 10 minutes straight. Or scenes where he's just sat in a car and it's completely dark and you can't see what's going on. There's no sound, there's no dialogue, it's just him sat in a car. It's just like looking at a still image for ages. And people would say, well, why isn't that cut out? That adds nothing to the story, adds nothing to the character. All it adds to is the runtime, which is already long enough. Why is it there? It's to create this feel of realism in this scene. But it's also very boring. I cannot lie to you. This movie really bored me in some places. The second act is a bore. The first act really got us to know these characters, really got us to feel for these characters and in their situation, what their home life was like, what the society's like. This film has a lot of really deep messages and themes about this society and race, which I thought were amazingly so well presented. It wasn't in your face. They didn't once even hint or say anything about what this message is. It was such a deep thing in there, and they do it through very, very, really amazing imagery. There is this thing about lions in the film. I don't think this is a spoiler, it's just something to show the difference in race and the difference in society in this film. And because the one family is watching a program about lions being born, and one family is playing a video game where they're killing and hunting lions. That was just a small bit of imagery in there that just riveted me. That told you everything you need to know about what this movie was trying to convey in its message. And it absolutely floored me. It was amazing. It was like riveting, captivating stuff. Just from one little thing. And there's many things in here that also suggest that. But then we reached the third act. Because after the second act, after the movie finished, I didn't feel like, oh, that felt like 3 hours long. I was just like, yeah, that felt like a normal, averagely paced film. Very slow. This film is insanely slow paced, which is fine. But when it's got a runtime of 3 hours, you expect some scenes to move a little bit faster. But they really don't. But the second act really drags. And I could really feel the runtime kicking in. And I was just like, okay, we're going to have a shot of Vince Vaughn eating this sandwich for the next hour and a half. And I was just like, we've got to get a move on, because I'm going to fall asleep. But then the third act happened. I was actually tempted to switch this film off and just watch the rest tomorrow. But then I was like, no, I'm going to sit through this thing all night. And I sat through the last 2 hours, and the last third act was riveting with tension, intensity. I felt for the villains. There's this huge sequence where there's these bank robbers robbing a bank, and they escape in this getaway car, and the people in the front, you really felt for them in the front of the van, and it was so exhilarating. I was like tight-fisted for this entire sequence. It was really, really thrilling and engaging, and Vince Vaughn and Mel Gibson, forgot his name there, were incredible in this movie. You really felt them. This movie leaves you unsatisfied, but it also does leave you satisfied. It leaves you with a message, a very simplistic message. But the thing is, I didn't take away anything from this film. This is my biggest issue with the movie. With a film that is nearly 3 hours long, I want to feel like I did take something out of it. Not just a feel of realism. Because that's what I loved about this movie the best. Its feel of realism. I haven't really felt a film that actually felt as real as this. But the thing is, if something's nearly 3 hours long, I want to feel like I've taken something out of it. I want to feel like I've been entertained by it. I don't think I was entertained in this movie once. Because the third act, I loved. It was riveting, it was tense, it was incredible. There was some very dark and brutal action, which I really liked, and very intense, gory sequences, and some very emotional sequences. The movie definitely tries to put an emotional core in this film, and it really works. But, again, I didn't feel fully invested. I didn't feel like the runtime meant anything, because even though the runtime is very beefy and long, I can understand why it is that long. To put many extended sequences in, to put as many things in there as they can to make this feel of realism. But the thing is, in a normally paced film, all of that stuff would be just cut out. But we've become accustomed to, in this day and age, films like this being very fast-moving, following a very familiar structure, and following a certain fast-paced where every single scene has got to mean something. In every single scene, something has got to be happening. And this movie doesn't do that. This movie takes the risk to do something different. I wouldn't actually recommend seeing this one, even though I think it's very well made and very well done. There's no point investing 3 hours of your time to sit down and watch this, because I don't think you're going to be entertained by it. And I don't think there's going to be anything extra you're going to be taking away from it. It didn't affect me afterwards. I didn't think about it afterwards. I was just like, okay, I watched it. It's probably going to be forgettable. I appreciated it for being different and realistic and very tense and riveting. But I'm never going to want to watch that again. It is a very well-made film, and a film that is different to everything else that is coming out today. And I have to appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and give Dragged Across Concrete a B+. I could have made this review like 40 minutes long. I have a lot more things to say about this movie than I did put this in the review, but I did really like it, and if you did see the film, I would like to know what you thought about it. And of course, thank you for watching, and goodbye.